What if I told you that one man's biggest lie, pretending to be in a coma, turned into the greatest truth of his life? Stay with me, because this is not just a story about wealth, but about love, honesty, and the courage to live again. Richard Collins was a name everyone in the city knew. He was the kind of man who made the front pages, self-made millionaire, owner of hotels and businesses, a man whose suits cost more than most people's monthly salaries. To the world, he had everything: cars, mansions, money to burn. But what no one saw was the silence of his home, the emptiness of his nights, and the gnawing fear that people only loved him for what he had, not who he was. One evening, a sharp pain seized his chest during a business gala. The panic in the room, the rushing ambulance, the bright hospital lights all blurred together until he woke up in a private room, hooked to machines. The doctors said he'd be fine, but Richard's clever, restless mind sparked a dangerous idea. For once in his life, he wanted to know the truth. Who cared about him without the promise of money or power? Who would stay by his side if he had nothing to give? So Richard Collins, the man who could buy anything, pretended to be helpless. He told the doctors to inform the world he had slipped into a coma. Only the hospital staff knew the truth, that he wasn't dying, only resting. And so, Richard became a silent watcher, lying still in bed, listening to every word around him. Days passed. Business partners visited once, snapped a few photos, muttered about stocks and inheritance, and disappeared. Distant relatives came, spoke in hushed tones about his wealth, and argued over what they might receive when he passed. Nobody spoke to him as a person, only as a bank account waiting to be divided. His chest tightened, not with illness, but with sorrow. But then she walked in. Her name was Emily, one of the night shift nurses. She wasn't glamorous, not the type to catch attention at a millionaire's party. She was ordinary in the most extraordinary way: kind eyes, a warm smile, and a voice that carried a softness money couldn't buy. She didn't know Richard was listening, but every night she would talk to him as if he could hear her. "Mr. Collins," she'd whisper, adjusting his blanket, "I don't know if you're in there somewhere. But if you are, I hope you know you're not alone." At first, Richard dismissed it as routine kindness. But as days became weeks, Emily's words pierced through his loneliness. She would tell him about her day, how hard it was working double shifts to pay for her younger brother's college tuition, how her mother's health bills stacked higher than her salary could handle, how she sometimes cried in the break room but came back with a smile because patients deserved hope. And then one night, something happened that Richard would never forget. Emily thought he was in deep coma, so she leaned close to his ear and whispered a confession. "Sometimes I wish I had someone to talk to, someone who listens. I don't care about riches or fancy things. I just want someone who understands, who sees me. But maybe people like you don't care about people like me. Still, I like to believe, even if you never wake up, that you're listening. And if you are, thank you." Richard's heart thundered in his chest. He had spent his life drowning in contracts, wealth, and suspicion, yet here was a woman who poured out her soul to him without asking for anything in return. She didn't want his money. She just wanted to be heard. For the first time in years, Richard felt tears press against his eyes. He wanted to speak, to thank her, to tell her that he was listening. But he stayed still, torn between the safety of his disguise and the risk of revealing himself. The days that followed were even harder. Emily kept coming, caring for him with patience no one else offered. When his family fought in the hallway, she calmed the storm. When colleagues stopped showing up, she still remained. Her quiet strength began to change Richard. He realized the greatest wealth wasn't in his accounts, it was in moments of human connection, in compassion freely given. One evening, Emily entered his room exhausted, her shoulders slumped. She sat beside him and held his limp hand. "Mr. Collins," she murmured, her voice trembling, "I don't know if I can do this anymore. Life feels so heavy. I'm trying my best, but some days I feel invisible. Like no one sees me. But, you, even in silence, you've been my friend. I hope that, wherever you are inside, you know that I care about you. Not your money. Not your name. Just you." That was the moment Richard couldn't hold back anymore. Slowly, with effort, he squeezed her hand. Emily gasped, her eyes wide as she stared at him. And then, for the first time in weeks, Richard opened his eyes. "Emily," he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking, "I see you. I've heard every word." Tears streamed down her face as she covered her mouth, unable to believe what had just happened. Richard reached for her trembling hand and said, "You've given me something no one else has, truth. You cared for me when the world only cared for my money. And I don't want to go back to living without that." From that day forward, Richard's life changed. He didn't return to boardrooms and endless deals. Instead, he invested his fortune into helping people like Emily, families drowning in medical bills, students who couldn't afford college, hospitals struggling to keep doors open. But more importantly, he found a partner in Emily. She taught him that love doesn't measure wealth, it measures heart, and in turn, Richard gave her what she had always longed for, not riches, not gifts, but someone who truly saw her. And so, the millionaire who once pretended to be in a coma discovered that sometimes, the greatest awakening isn't of the body, it's of the soul, because in the end, the richest man isn't the one with the biggest bank account, but the one who learns how to love and be loved in return.